Okay.
Senses.
Anybody online with us? Okay. I think maybe we should get started.
Sure. I forgot to.
Yeah. Hey Simon, how are you? Good. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for catching my.
Meanwhile,
I didn't know if it was a change of time or.
meanwhile, I thought he was joking with us when he said 9.
Okay. We're on. Let's see.
16A1.
It's Zion Amud Aleph.
Yeah.
That's Zion Amud Aleph. Okay, so if you remember, we had a, we've been talking about whether or not you can shecht an animal with a wheel. In other words, you can attach the shechita knife to the end of the wheel, and whether you could shecht an animal that way. The Gemara wanted to say, Amar third line, Amar hashochet b'muchni, the person who shechts b'muchni. Muchni is closer. Okay, muchni is a machine. In other words, it's like a wheel. It's where the knife is attached to something. Elliot, remind me how to fill it in the car. Okay, hashochet b'muchni, says the Gemara. Shchita so kshera, right? The shchita is good, v'hatanya, but we learn in a brisa shchita so psula. So the Gemara answered lo kashi. We're talking about two different types of wheels. Ha bisarna de pachra, ha bisarna de maya. The wheel where we say it's kosher is the sarna de pachya. That's the potter's wheel. The potter's wheel is always going around, and the potter's wheel is controlled by the potter. He has some kind of foot pedal that he's pressing down, and as he presses down, it causes the wheel to go around. So when the wheel goes around and shechs the behema, it is shechting it through his koach, because he's causing the wheel to go around. It's shechting him through his koach. We haven't yet learned why you need koach to shecht. We'll come to learn that, but you all know it, right? You all know you need koach to shecht. If a knife would fall off the table and shecht the behema, it would not be a valid shechita. So we don't know exactly why. You all know that's the halacha, but exactly why we'll see in Yirtzeh Hashem. But this potter's wheel going around, that's not a problem. However, if it's a water wheel, so a water wheel is moving around. Why? Because the water is pushing the paddles, and that's causing the wheel to move. That's not coming from koach gavra. It's not coming from koach gavra, it's psula. So yes, it's true we have two brisos, one that says that shechting with a knife attached to a wheel is kosher, and one that says that shechting with a knife attached to a wheel is pasul. But they're talking about two different kinds of wheels. Or the Gemara gives another possibility, ibois ema, if you want to say, you can also understand it to say hava bisarna demaya, that they're both talking about the water wheel. If they're both talking about the water wheel, how can one situation be kosher, one situation be pasul? They're both talking about the water wheel. So the Gemara,
the person is putting the water on it.
Correct. The lokashi, exactly what Simon says. Ha b'koach rishon, ha b'koach sheni. All right. What is koach rishon and what is koach sheni? Koach rishon is a koach that is attributed to the individual. It's the first thing that results from your action. Okay, that's koach rishon.
Direct action.
Koach Rishon translates literally as the first action, right? Meaning the first action that occurs as a result of something that you do. The best example, or an example, would be if I turn on the faucet, the water that comes out of the faucet, immediately when I open the faucet, that's Koach Rishon. In other words, hey Leo, right, what's going on? The water is, right, where's the water? The water is sitting by the faucet, right? It's sitting by the faucet. I open the faucet, right? Opening the faucet is the Koach Rishon, right? I do that. The first water that comes out is Koach Rishon. That's Koach Rishon. What about after that, the water that keeps coming out? So the water that keeps coming out is not Koach Rishon. We call that Koach Sheni. So that's what we're talking about. So I have a water wheel, right? A water wheel works because the paddles of the water wheel are in a trough of mayim, a trough of water. Now, what happens? There's no water flowing through the trough right now, so the wheel's not turning. Where is the water? The water is flowing, but it's blocked from the trough. I remove the blockage. When I remove the blockage, what happens? That first bit of water goes into the trough and turns the wheel. That first turn of the wheel is Koach Rishon, and that is attributed to me. Now, if after the first behema was shechted, I would try to put another behema there, that wouldn't be good. Because subsequent water which is flowing in the trough is not Koach Rishon. It's called Koach Sheni. Now, exactly where Koach Rishon ends and Koach Sheni begins is the kind of question that Elliot would ask, right? Right? And it's a good question, right? It's a good question. In other words, when I open the faucet, how much of the water that comes out is Koach Rishon? And for how long does it retain its status as Koach Rishon? So we're going to come to an interesting, and in other words, I'm joking a little bit, with Elliot asking that question, but it's a very good question because we're going to come to see in a moment that this is, that this kind of knowledge is necessary. It's very precise. So let's see. So what does the Gemara say here, Leo? Come on over here. Right, we'll just turn this. Leo, you'll be on camera too. Okay. Okay, so what does the Gemara say? So the Gemara says, Lokashya habakach rishon habakach sheni v'chihad amar Rav Papa, right? And this is similar to that statement that Rav Papa made. Hai man dekafte lechavre, a person who ties up his friend. I don't know how long he's his friend, but he ties up his friend and ties up another person. That's the reference here. Ties up another person. Va'ashkil ale bidka demaya umes. And what did he do? So he did the following. He put his friend in a pit, right? And there's a cistern of water that is poised to fill up the pit. Okay? He ties the guy up and he puts him in the pit. Okay? The guy's fine. Right now he's fine. He's tied up, he's in the pit, he's alive, he's fine. And now what does he do? Now he goes and puts a hole in the cistern or opens the valve of the cistern. And the water flows into the pit and kills the guy. So what's the halacha under those circumstances? Did he kill him or did he not kill him?
He did kill him.
Okay, he did kill him, right? He did kill him. Why did he kill him?
Because of his koach.
Because the water that came into the pit, the koach rishon that came into the pit, right, is what caused his death.
Yeah.
Right, it's what caused his death. Now, what about? And that's the case which is mentioned here. The kafte lechavre, he tied up this person, va'ashkil ale bidka demaya, and he caused the water to fall on this person, umeis, and the person died chayiv. So the guy who tied him up, he's chayiv, not because he tied him up. He's chayiv because of the fact that he caused the water to fall on this guy who's tied up. And the guy drowned, right? but not because he was. In other words, we say chayiv here. We're chayiv because we attribute the water to this person, to the person who tied up this other guy. Let's say Ruvain tied up Shimon, and then Ruvain opened up the faucet of the cistern. So we attribute the water that's coming out of the cistern now to Ruvain. And that is no different, asks Gemara, my timer, what's the reason that he's chayiv? So the Gemara says, Geirei didei hu da'ahani be. It's like he shot arrows at this guy. In other words, here's the comparable case, okay? I take Shimon, I tie him up, I sit him in that corner over there. Now I take a crossbow with a couple of arrows, and I proceed to shoot the arrows at Shimon. And I have pretty good aim, and I kill Shimon. Now, did I kill Shimon, or did the arrows kill Shimon?
It was you that caused the arrows to kill Shimon.
Right. In other words, nobody would claim that the arrows are chayiv, that they killed Shimon. Clearly, the arrows came about through my koach. And since the arrows came about through my koach, I'm chayiv for killing Shimon.
That's the whole
Right?
argument. Guns don't kill people. People kill people.
Right? From a halachic perspective, that's exactly true. In other words, right? The arrows killed him, but the arrows came through my koach. So similarly, the water killed him, but the water came about through my koach. That's the way the Gemara understands it. Okay? Now, the Gemara continues now and says, V'hani mili b'koach rishon. This is all if the water that's coming into the cistern is classified as koach rishon. Aval b'koach sheni, but if it's considered koach sheni, so grama ba'almahu, right? If it's koach sheni, it is considered grama. Give me a case of koach sheni. Describe for me a case of koach sheni, where I kill somebody by koach sheni. How does that work?
If the bullet ricocheted.
You let the water out, the water hits the rock falls onto it, and it kills them.
Okay.
In a case of
Okay.
a gun, the bullet ricocheted. You didn't aim directly at the person, but it ended up killing him.
So it seems, it's interesting, these two cases. It seems that the Gemara defines koach sheni by the amount of time that passes between the action and the result. Okay? So meaning as follows. Let's say that, right? Let's say that there were two pits, right? And when the first pit filled up, it then spilled over into the second pit. What do? I tie up the guy and I put him in the second pit. And then I open the faucet in the first pit. So what's going to happen? The guy's going to die. But he's not going to die right away, because that whole first pit has to fill up with water. Once that first pit fills up with water, so then as that water overflows into the second pit, he's going to drown. That's considered koach sheni.
Are you still going to be responsible
Well, responsible where?
in his death?
Okay,
Because
when you say responsible, what do you mean by that?
Did you murder him?
You absolutely
kill him?
You killed him, yes, but you're not chayav b'dinei adam. In other words, you killed him, but Bezdin can't kill you, even if there were witnesses.
It's not murder, it's manslaughter.
But
Yeah, exactly.
It's not murder, it's manslaughter.
it's not murder. No, it's murder. Well, why? What's the difference between murder and manslaughter?
I think murder is a direct action.
Manslaughter, you were involved.
Indirect, or
You were involved in manslaughter. As Simon says, you weren't.
If I hit somebody with my car, what is that? Murder or manslaughter?
On purpose, it's murder.
if I run the guy over on purpose, it's murder, and
Right.
if I do it accidentally,
Manslaughter.
It's
And it's
manslaughter. If
manslaughter.
You weren't intending on running them over.
right,
Just scaring them or something.
right, or let's say,
That's
Let's say-
not
not are you on? No, he's not. Right, but let's say that my car, somebody hit my car, and now my car goes careening over to the side and kills a guy who's standing on the side. That's manslaughter. That's not murder. That's manslaughter. See, but there the question is kavana. Here I have kavana. I want to kill this guy. Right? I tie him up and put him in the pit. In the second pit. I know he's going to die, and I want him to die. I arranged this whole thing. I want him to die, but I arranged it in a way so that I'm not chayiv b'dinei adam. Right? Because of the fact that there is this delay between what I do and the result, it's considered koach sheni. Because of the delay, it's considered koach sheni. I'll give you a little bit of an example. And by the way, just go back to your question for a second. Even though I'm not chayiv b'dinei adam, even though Bezdin can't execute me, I'm still chayiv b'dinei shamayim, right? No question that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to. Somebody just joined us, okay? No question that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of me. B'dinei shamayim I'm chayiv, but b'dinei adam I'm not chayiv. That's koach sheni, and the Gemara defines koach sheni, not here particularly. Here the Gemara doesn't define it at all, but the Gemara defines koach sheni as an amount of time that if there's a significant amount of time, and again, Elliot's going to ask me what's significant, right? If there's a significant amount of time between the thing that I did and the resulting death, so then that's considered koach sheni. So here's a practical example, a little bit of a practical example of this. Am I allowed to open up my refrigerator on Shabbos? You all know the answer.
Does it have a light?
It has a light and I shut it off. I shut off my light before Shabbos, and if I had a sub-zero, I shut off the automatic suction before Shabbos.
Yes.
Put my refrigerator on Shabbos mode. Am I allowed to open my refrigerator on Shabbos?
Yes.
Okay. What am I concerned about? Let me ask it that way.
Turning the motor on.
Turning the compressor on.
Yes.
Right? I'm concerned about turning the compressor on. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is when I open the refrigerator door,
Mhm.
Temperature
the
goes up.
temperature is going to drop in the refrigerator because the warm air outside, which is probably a good 30 or 40 degrees warmer than the air in the refrigerator, is going to go into the refrigerator, and it's going to lower the temperature in the refrigerator. It's going to raise the temperature in the refrigerator. And as it raises the temperature in the refrigerator, ultimately what's going to happen? The compressor is going to go on to circulate the cool air in an attempt to bring the temperature back down to where the refrigerator is supposed to be. Now, when I open the door of that refrigerator, I caused that. Why did that compressor go on? That compressor went on because I opened the door. If I didn't open that door, would the compressor have gone on?
No.
Your compressor doesn't run continuously in your refrigerator, right? Your compressor only runs when the temperature in the refrigerator rises. So I caused that compressor to run. Is that a problem?
Depends what your intent was.
No, because it was
That's
a
how you
five.
do it.
Depends what my
Depends what your
intent was.
Depends.
My intent was to open the door.
You open
that was
your
my
door to
intent.
your house and you walk inside.
I was about to say that. You open the door of your house, you leave it open,
If you leave it open.
that unit is bound to kick in.
Okay, let's start small. Let's start with the refrigerator. Okay? Can I open the refrigerator?
Yes.
So you all know the answer is yes. Right? Why can I open the refrigerator? Isn't my opening of the refrigerator responsible for that compressor going on?
But it
Doesn't
doesn't
happen
happen
right away.
immediately.
Oh.
Right.
So the answer is yes. you're opening the door is responsible for that compressor going on, but that compressor going on is only koach sheni. Why? Because it doesn't happen right away. Right? It doesn't happen right away. How long does it take to happen? Depends.
So the kosher switch is koach sheni? Totally different topic.
No, the kosher switch is a completely different creature. Right? Completely different creature. Here you're dealing with the compressor going on. The compressor going on, by the way, seems to be a malacha d'Rabbanan. Right? You're not violating any isurei dioraisa. You're violating isurei d'Rabbanan. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, but it's important to know the level. Right? You're violating isurei d'Rabbanan, and because of the fact that it is going to take an indeterminate amount of time after you close the door for that refrigerator compressor to turn on, that's an indication that it is koach sheni. And since it's koach sheni, it's mutter to do. Now, there are people who are makpid. There are people who say, you know what? I'm going to wait until I hear the compressor cycle on.
Well, you have a bigger problem. Because it goes off when you open the fridge.
The compressor
Some of the
goes
fridges
off.
will shut your compressor off when you open the fridge.
You open the fridge.
Yeah. My freezer downstairs will go off if you open the compressor. If you open up the fridge door.
Compressor goes off?
Yeah.
I have a freezer when you close the door, you hear the suction. And
That's the vacuum.
The vacuum,
That's a
right?
vacuum.
You're right. You hear the vacuum, right? So we don't open that freezer on Shabbos because of that problem. And I think there are some Sub-Zeros that have the same thing, and they have the Shabbos switch to circumvent that. Okay?
No, but some of them the compressor will go off. If you
Some of them the compressor goes off.
Right.
That's strange.
because it doesn't want to burn off the compressor if the door's open.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So,
But I'm
but
saying.
right. So so you're causing the compressor to go off. Now that sounds like an
It's like the
immediate.
oven.
That's a code.
That
Like
sounds
the
like
ovens that
that
go
sounds
off.
like an immediate
It's like-
kind of thing.
Right. So
Yes.
some ovens will shut off when you open the door, which is what they have to fix when the Shabbos thing. The start your Shabbos mode.
The ovens go off.
Sometimes when you open the door.
Okay, so I'm not aware of
So
that.
that's part of the shtick.
I thought it had to do. See, I thought that the Shabbos mode had to do more with like how the way in which the kosher switch works.
Right, but some of the newer ovens,
They go off
they go
when you
off
open the door.
And
Okay.
then they go back on. when
Okay.
you close the door. You have to-
All right. So that would have to be disabled, right?
Right.
That feature would have to be disabled. But that would be the difference between koach rishon and koach sheni. Now, what about walking out of your house on a hot day in the summer? Where you're going to go outside of your house on a hot day in the summer. So you're going to open the door. You're going to let hot air into the house. Isn't that going to kick off the AC?
Not right away.
Okay, so it might not kick off the AC because the amount of air that you allow into the house might not be sufficient to raise the temperature that much. But even if it does kick off the AC, so it's not going to happen right away. And from the fact that it's not going to happen right away, it is a koach sheni, right? It's a koach sheni. And a koach sheni, we're not where, we allow you to do it. You don't have to wait till the compressor is on and the AC to run out, to run out of the door. Okay? So that's koach sheni. Okay. It's interesting. Koach sheni and grama seem to be two sides of the same coin. In other words, grama is an indirect action. Koach sheni is an example of a grama. In other words, when something occurs by koach sheni, it is considered to occur through grama, right? An indirect action. Okay, let's go back to the Gemara.
Is there an example of grama without koach sheni?
I'm not sure. So I'm thinking the traditional grama switch. How does the traditional grama switch work? I'm not talking about the kosher switch, right? The traditional grama switch, how does it work? Okay, the traditional grumma switch worked in a very basic way. That here was a photoelectric cell here. Here was a light source. The light source was blinking at some kind of irregular intervals. Like it wasn't set, it would blink according to some kind of algorithm, okay? In between the two, right, in between the light source and the photoelectric cell, there was a physical barrier. This is the old-fashioned grumma switch. There was a physical barrier, okay? Let's say the very old-fashioned gramophones. When you picked up the receiver on that gramophone and you listened, nothing happened right away. Why? Because when you picked up the receiver, you caused the barrier to be lifted, but you don't know, there was a little bit of a delay until, yes, there's no barrier now, but this light source is going on according to some algorithm, and it might be an instant or two before the...
But that's exactly what kosher switch is.
Correct. Well, the kosher switch claims to be even more than that. And the issue with the kosher switch is grumma permissible lechatchila? In other words, what is what is the kosher switch basically saying? The kosher switch is basically saying, you can use this to turn your lights on and off, right? I think that's the problem that the poskim had. Not that it doesn't operate according to a valid halachic principle, right? There is a valid halachic principle. And, certainly if you would say, okay, I have a nursing home and I'm going to install grumma switches. We're going to install smart switches in my nursing home.
That was the initial idea.
Or something like that, right? Okay, so maybe you can make an argument that situation is a kind of situation that would allow you to do it. But I think once it was marketed as, hey, you can turn your lights on and off on Shabbos, the average person can turn your lights on and off on Shabbos, I think that's when the poskim started to withdraw or backtrack or do whatever they did, because they said we never intended this to be used, by people on a regular basis. Why? Because it's grumma, and grumma is not something that lichatchila should be relied on. B'diavad, it's one thing if the prohibition is a derabanan prohibition, but not something to be relied on in a lichatchila kind of situation. I think that's what happened with the kosher switch.
He's my best friend.
Yeah,
so I know.
I think that's what happened. Now the kosher switch was much more sophisticated than the grumma system that I explained. Right, the kosher switch not only had the light source as an algorithm, but it also had the receiver in an algorithm, and it was theoretically possible that the two should never meet. It was theoretically possible that you could turn on that light switch and the light would never go on. Now, obviously, that had to be dealt with, or else what good is the light switch? But that's the idea behind it. In other words, I think what he tried to do, Kaladi, right? I think what he tried to do was to make it as grummatic as possible, right? An algorithm here, an algorithm here, that all of that was part of it, so that there was there could be a noticeable delay. And I think he tried to deal with all the issues, but halacha and politics, not necessarily. They don't necessarily make what's that expression?
A good shidduch.
Good shidduch, right?
So what happens if you open the door, you open the fridge, and that's the actual action that caused it to go on because you just happened to catch it at the wrong time?
It's a davar. It wasn't something that you had kavanah for. In other words, it's the same thing like you walking home at night, and you happen to walk across a motion detector you didn't know was there. You caused that motion detector. You caused that light to go on, no question. But it was, in other words, you open your refrigerator door 100 times, 99 times the compressor doesn't go off. You happen to catch that one time when the compressor was cycling. Okay, so let's go weiter in the Gemara. So now the Gemara continues, and what does the Gemara say? Gemara brings us another case, a case which is, this is a separate case. We're back to Talush and Mechubar. In other words, we're done with Grama, we're back to Talush and Mechubar. Says the Gemara, Yosiv Rav Achure de Rebbe Chia. You know, I'm not even, can't even follow along with me, I'm sorry. Yosiv Rav Achure de Rebbe Chia. Rav was sitting behind Rebbe Chia. Rebbe Chia kame de Rebbe, and Rebbe Chia was sitting in front of Rebbe. So you have Rebbe, Rav, and Rebbe Chia. That's how they're sitting. That's how they're sitting and learning. V'yosiv Rebbe v'ka'amar. So Rebbe says, Minayin l'shchita shehu betalush. How do I know that shchita has to take place with something which is talush? Talush meaning something which is detached from the ground. That shchita, in order for shchita to be kosher, it has to be talush, it has to be something detached from the ground. How do I know that? Shene'emar, so Rebbe quotes the following pasuk. Vayikach es hama'acheles lishchot es bino. Where's that from? Where's that from? And he takes the knife to slaughter his son. Akedas Yitzchak. Right, Akedas Yitzchak. Abraham takes the knife, vayikach es hama'acheles lishchot es bino, to shecht his son. The fact that he took the knife, what does that indicate? It indicates that the knife had to be detached. Had to be detached, right? Because he took it. Had to be detached. He actually carried the knife with him. So Amar le Rav le Rebbe Chia. So Rav, who is sitting behind Rebbe Chia, taps him on the shoulder and says, "My Amar." Right? What is he saying? Right? What is Rav saying? So Amar le. So Rebbe Chia said to Rav, "Vav de kasiv ufta ka'amar." Right? Great line. What does he say? It's as if he wrote a vav on a tree trunk, right? On tree bark. What does that mean? So you know the vav, the letter vav, right? Those of you who are studying Safras. Any of you here? Safras? Okay. So you know the letter vav is if there's a break in the letter vav, it runs the risk of becoming the yud. Right? That's, the yud, if a yud is too long, it runs the risk of becoming a vav. And if the vav is too short, it runs the risk of becoming a yud. And if the vav is long, but it's broken, so it could be a yud. So what is he saying here? It's saying this explanation that he gave doesn't make sense. It's like writing a vav on tree bark. What does it mean, writing a vav on tree bark? Let's say you take a piece of chalk and you draw a line on the trunk of a tree, right, over the bark of the tree. So what's going to happen? How many gaps are there going to be in that line? A lot, because what happens with the bark? There's breaks in the bark. The bark is not a solid. It's not a solid, right? There's breaks in it. So you're going to make your line, and it's going to have breaks, cracks, or openings in it. So Rebbe Chia said to Rav that Rebbe's reasoning is like he wrote a vav on tree bark, meaning that his reasoning has gaps. His reasoning has cracks in it. His reasoning has gaps. So what does that mean? How can they say that about Rebbe? So let's see. So that's what Rebbe Chia says to Rav, right? Rav taps Rebbe Chia on the shoulder and he says, "What did Rebbe just say?" And Rebbe Chia turns around to Rav and he says, his reasoning is as faulty as if you were to write a vav on tree bark. Says Rav to Rebbe Chia, "V'hakra ka'amar." All right, wait a second. You might not like his reasoning, but he quoted a pasuk. Right? That was Rebbe's reasoning was based on a pasuk. The pasuk was about Abraham. He based it on the pasuk about Abraham. So how can you tell me it's phony baloney, right? It's false. It's got gaps in it. The argument has cracks in it. How can you say that? So Rav Chia answered and he said, "Kra zrizuse de Avraham kamash malan." What is the pasuk coming to tell me? The pasuk is not coming to tell me that the knife was talush, right? That's not what the pasuk was coming to tell me. What was the pasuk coming to tell me? It was coming to tell me about the zerizus of Avraham, meaning that Avraham didn't know what was going to be on the top of the mountain. He didn't know if there was going to be anything sharp enough to shecht his son up there. So in order to be zoris, in order to be enthusiastic and to properly fulfill the command of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what did Abraham do? He brought with him a knife. He took the knife. So it's not that the pasuk is not telling us that he took the knife, the haraya, that the knife has to be talush, that you have to use something which is talush when you shech. He took the knife, meaning that he was zaris, he was enthusiastic, he was worried about doing this properly. He wanted to make sure he had all the bases covered. That's why he brought the knife, not because he needed to shecht with something talush. Theoretically, if there was something that was mechubar up on top of the mountain, he could have shechted with that. That's how they're learning the pasuk, right? That's how Rebbe Chia is learning the pasuk. If there was something mechubar on top of the mountain, Rav could have shechted with that. Abraham could have shechted with that. The pasuk is not coming to tell me that Abraham was teaching that it has to be talush, that the item you use has to be talush. The pasuk is simply teaching us that Abraham was trying to cover all of his bases. That Abraham wanted to make sure that there would be no issues, that he would be covered. That even if there was nothing on top of the mountain that was sharp enough to shecht Yitzchak, he would still be able to do it because he brought a knife with him. Okay, that's how they understand the pasuk. Vaikra Zeruzuse de Abraham Kamash Milan. So Amar Rava, what does Rava say? Pshita li, Rava says, it's clear to me, says Rava, Talush ulavasof chibro. Let's say that I had something that was talush, it was separate, and then I attached it to the ground. What's the halacha regarding that item? It was separate, and then I attached it to the ground. What's the halacha? So, interestingly,
like a
the
water
Gemara
wheel?
is not going to talk about shechita right away. What is the Gemara going to talk about? A whole bunch of other topics where talush and mechubar have relevance. For us, talking about shechita, talush and mechubar have relevance because there's a machlokes. Do you have to shecht with something which is talush, and if you shecht with something which is mechubar, is the shechita pasul or not? So for us, it has relevance. But the Gemara right now is going to take a little bit of a detour, and it's going to discuss other situations of talush and mechubar. So let me give you the first situation outside of the Gemara before we do it inside. We'll look at it in the following way. There's a halacha that in order for avodah zara in order for something to be defined as something which is oved avodah zara, it has to be talush. It can't be mechubar. Right? It can't. In other words, if the Ovdei Avodah Zarah say, or they start worshiping a mountain, right? We're going to bow down to this mountain. We're going to worship this mountain. This mountain is our deity. That's what they do. The halacha is it's not considered Avodah Zarah.
You know, shech in certain areas because of that.
That's a different halacha. There's a different halacha. Here we're saying that this mountain does not have the status of an avodah zarah. Now, where do we learn that from? So we learn it from a pasuk. The pasuk tells us that something that karka, which is by definition mechubar, karka, which is by definition mechubar, can't become avodah zarah. That's what it's telling us. So the Gemara is going to bring the following case. Let's say that I worshipped my house, right? I started davening to my house. I made my house into an avodah zarah. So what's the halacha? Is my house considered talush? Or is my house considered mechubar? Now, clearly the items in my house were at one point mechubar, right? The wood, whatever else was in my house that is of structural significance was at one point mechubar. It subsequently became talush, right? In other words, if I'm using wood, what happened? The tree was cut down, and the tree was cut down and subsequently made into lumber, and I bought the lumber for my house. Now I built my house. Once I built my house is now considered mechubar, right? You would say this house is mechubar, right? The house better be mechubar, right? Better, it better be. So the house is mechubar. It's talush. It was talush, and then it became mechubar again. So what is the status? Is the status talush, or is the status mechubar? So if I daven to my house, if I make my house into an avodah zarah, does it become an avodah zarah? So if we say it's talush, right, that talush and ulavasof mechubar is considered talush, then my house becomes an avodah zarah. If, on the other hand, we say no, if it was talush and then subsequently mechubar, it is defined as mechubar, then my house doesn't become an avodah zarah. Doesn't become a makom of avodah zarah. That's the question. You hear the question? Okay, let's look inside the Gemara. So what does the Gemara say? Right, so Amar Rabba. Rabba says, Pshita li, it's simple for me to assume, I understand. Talush ulevasof chibro, right? It was talush, and then it subsequently became mechubar. Le'inyan avodos kochavim have talush. Regarding avodah zarah, we consider this as talush. In other words, something was mechubar, then it became talush, right? It was attached to the ground, or it was the ground itself, and then it became separated from the ground, distinct from the ground, and then it was once again attached to the ground. Regarding avodah zarah, what's its status? Talush. Where do we learn that from? Da'amar mar, because we learn it in the following statement. Hamishtachave labayis shalo, a person who bows down or who worships his house, asuro, he has made his house forbidden. What does it mean he's made his house forbidden? So if you have a neighbor who worships his house, I don't know, right? Your neighbor bows down to his house, he worships his house, he thinks his house is a makom avodah zarah. It's usur for you to derive any benefit from that house, right? Now, if that's the statement, if that's the halacha, that it's usur for you to derive any benefit from the house, that must mean that something which was mechubar became talush, and then subsequently became mechubar again, is considered as talush when it comes to avodah zarah. Okay, is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
But you're assuming that the house was originally separated. Like, for example, if you like when we talk about the house with the mud and before when it's.
So you're saying to me, what if I hew?
If I'm in the Qumran caves, but instead of Qumran caves, it was the monastery built into caves.
Right.
Is that now? If we're going to assume that Christianity sect is an avodah zarah or whatever Canaanite avodah zarah they were doing in the caves, does that make that cave?
Well,
now?
they weren't so.
But it was never detached.
Right, I'm saying it was never detached. It was always part.
Right,
Of it.
right. So we have right.
It's
We
a
are.
house. So
We
why
are.
they assuming it's
The
a house?
Gemara is dealing with the question of mechubar.
Right.
Then it became talush, and then
Okay.
subsequently became
Yeah,
mechubar
mechubar
again.
again.
That's what the Gemara is dealing with right now. Right? And the Gemara wants to know, what's the status? Is the status talush, or is the status mechubar? That's what the Gemara wants to know. Okay, so let's see. We have time. Yeah, we have 2 minutes. Okay. All right, so what is the Gemara? So we're going to learn as follows. Let's see. The Amar Mishtachave Labayis Shalo Asro. the isal kadai tachabe mechubar. And if you want to think that, wait a second, why should he be mechubar? Right? Why should the house become usher? It is, after all, mechubar. And we have a principle, Elohehem al heharim velo heharim Elohehem. This is a pasuk in Devarim. You can look over for the pasuk. You'll see the pasuk in your Gemara, maybe. Actually, no. Pasuk is not brought down here. Maybe it's brought down in the English.
It is.
Right. Devarim 12:2. Okay. No, I mean, it's mentioned here. What is it? Right. This is the verse from which it is derived that the earth itself cannot become forbidden as an object of worship. Okay. The entirety of the pasuk is not here in front of us. Okay. I don't even think Rashi. Let's see. Does Rashi mention it? I mean, Rashi, yeah, it's Devarim, right? But Rashi says, right? The Kaimalan, Sha'oved es heharim. No, say it again.
12:10?
12:2.
12:2.
Abed te'abdun et kol ha'mekamot asher avdu sham hagoyim asher atem yorshim otam et Elohehem ale arim haramim ve'al hagvot v'tahat kol etz ra'anan.
Okay, now we're not done. We know you're here. Good. All right. So the pasuk there says, right? Elohehem al heharim. In other words, it is their divinities on the mountain. Velo heharim Elohehem, but their mountains can't become divinities. From here we learn that something which is mechubar can't become usher as an avodah zarah, as a makom avodah zarah. So if you want to say isal gedai tachabe mechubar, if you want to say that the house is mechubar, well, how can the house become usher? Because we have a principle that Elohehem al heharim velo heharim Elohehem, right? So it must be that the house is not considered mechubar. So when it comes to this case of avodah zarah, what are we learning? Mechubar, then it became talush, then it became mechubar again. Le'inyan avodah zarah, it's considered mechubar. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hagdama to what we're going to do next week, and then we'll jump into it next week. So the laws of Tumah and Tahara are not particularly relevant to us litza'arenu because we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. All of us are Tamei Meis. So the more minor laws of Tumah and Tahara don't really apply, or they're not. We're not as conscious of them as we might be if we had a Beis Hamikdash. So we have the following principles. So you know, during the Pesach Seder, and I don't know if Sephardim do the same thing. Interesting. I never thought about it. Do you wash your hands before dipping the vegetable in the water?
Yes.
Okay, why do we do that? Why do we wash our hands before dipping the vegetable in the water?
So the children was what you contaminate. You could.
Well, I mean, Elliot is right. We do it so the children will ask. That's right. That's, by the way, that's the general answer. If you have any question about the Pesach Seder, it's so the children will ask. That's why we do it. But the children are going to ask, and what are we going to explain to them? We're going to say, we're doing it because this is what they used to do. Whenever they ate anything dipped in liquid, in one of the 8 kinds of liquid, they would wash their hands first because liquid serves as a conduit for tumah. In other words, if my hands are if I'm tamei, my hands are perfectly dry. I pick up an apple. The apple is perfectly dry. The apple doesn't become tummy. If I pick it up. I touch the apple doesn't become tummy. But if the apple is wet or my hands are wet and I then touch the apple, so the apple will become tummy.
That's the green we were talking about.
That's the
grain we were talking about a while ago. The grain on top of the roof.
The grain on top of the roof with the water, right? That's precisely now. In order for that liquid to serve as a conduit, it has to fulfill the requirements of the pasuk, which are encapsulated in the words v'chi yutan. We'll look at the pasuk when we come to this next week. But it means that I have to be happy that the water is there. In other words, I have to have wanted the water to be there. Right? There has to be a reason for the water to be there. If I have that reason, then it's v'chi yutan. If I don't, it's not v'chi yutan. If I have the reason, the water can transmit tuma. If I didn't want it to be there, then it will not transmit tuma. That's where we'll pick up next week. Again, looking at something which was mechubar, and then subsequently it became talush, and then it became mechubar again. How is that defined vis-a-vis tuma and tahara?